Today's training is about outcome visioning and goal setting, and it's one of my favorite subjects, maybe second to negotiation, because I think it's really, really important, and it talks about why we're doing our work, why I'm doing my work, why you're doing your work, and for me, my why is for you guys to thrive. Obviously, with the capping system, your fees into the firm are limited. And I've had agents ask me, why would you do that? It's the way it should be structured, but what really turns me on is seeing particularly young agents be successful. So it's about thriving from many different angles. I think this is probably the most powerful training I can do for you folks because it really frames everything else. If we look at everything we're doing and all the learning, it's about a vision and working towards that vision. So it kind of makes it all come together. From my perspective, to be a superstar agent, now we're into your workbook, you must gain clarity on your desired future. This future is what I call your outcome vision. Other people would refer to this in different ways, but really it's about how we want things to turn out. And you must know why you want that vision to come to fruition, the why. You must gain some mastery on creating new mindsets. Again, we'll talk about that. Some people refer to those as attitudes, but I think it's much bigger than that, as we'll see today. You must set a series of specific goals, and you must get clear on the actions necessary to achieve your goals starting today. First section is about outcome visioning. And I've talked about this in the past. You see this particularly in sports. When you learn about how people are trained as great professional athletes. Jack Nicklaus here in our photograph here was a really master at it. In fact, in his instructional books, he talks about visioning the outcome of the shot. And when you would watch old footage of Jack Nicklaus, he would stand behind every shot for a moment and visualize the shot. That was part of his routine. He was actually seeing himself hit the ball, where the ball landed, the flight of the ball in his mind. So, I mean, this is the greatest golfer of all time, and this is something he did every day. A little bit of insights on outcome visioning. When you're at survival, you want to set your goals and your visions to stability and build a solid foundation. And when you have a strong enough why you want to do these things, you can survive anyhow. Most agents aim for nothing, as our friend Joe from Chicago would say. I love his line. They aim at nothing and hit it with amazing accuracy. Outcome vision is really about your desires and objectives and goals you start out with is some kind of conceptual image. So when you think about what you want, the moment you start thinking about it, you're actually creating pictures in your mind. Where you are, what you want to buy, where you want to live, who you want to be with. These are visual images in your mind. And the stronger of these desires inspire you. So sometimes it's a simple one, but when you talk about an outcome vision, let's say 3 years from now, it should be very inspirational. That's where you want to take your life in the next 3 years. So that's your reason, what we call your why. If you properly define what you want in the future, then it's time to start setting and creating specific goals. We'll talk about that today. When you do this outcome visioning, it's about no limitations. So life is such a magical thing. We want to create an outcome vision without limitations. It should be very, very exciting. The ingredients for creating an outcome vision are the following. Belief in the process. You've got to believe in this visioning process, and you have to feel it in your gut. You've got to dedicate some time to it. You've got to be very open, because this is kind of unusual for business people to some extent. You've got to be open and kind of make yourself vulnerable in a way. Some people have fear. You've got to let go of the fear and ready yourself for greatness. It's not about the past. It's about where we're going in the future. The desire has to be really, really strong. And you have to commit to this process. So we're going to take a minute and we're going to start your first outcome vision. And we'll do this for about 60 seconds. So we'll visualize where we want our lives to be in 3 years, let's say, from today. And remember, you can create this in any way you want to and have fun with it like you were a child again. So we're going to go on a journey together, and we can actually do this after we stop filming. So I'm going to speed through this, but I actually want you to start writing down an outcome vision when we're done with the videotaping. So what I'm going to do is coach you to close your eyes and just visualize it for a few seconds, and then go to the end of the workbook and actually write down some of the things you thought about where you want to be in 3 years. So we'll come back to this when we're done taping. When you're at home, I want you to refine your outcome vision, and this is basically a recipe of how to do that. We're going to do a little bit of it today, but this part, these steps are in your workbook, so this is where you can take some time, follow these guidelines, and expand that outcome vision. And what I think the outcome vision should be is multifaceted. It's not just about money. It's about where you live, who you're with, what you're doing. Maybe you've changed your health. Maybe you've done something with your children. So it should include, or your community. It should include all facets of your life, the way you want all those to kind of align and come together down the road, 2 or 3, 4 years from now. I'm a big advocate of journaling, and it fits right in with outcome visioning. For years, I bought actually these Moleskine books that have, they're small and they have great paper in them. But you know, your life is a journey, and I advocate documenting your life. If you take the time and actually do this outcome visioning on a piece of paper, let's say 1-page legal pad, something kind of magical happens is you can actually put mixed thoughts or dreams into a concrete form, and as you move forward from that, your subconscious will start thinking about things. Oh, you know, that's something I would like to add to it. So having some kind of notebook with you or journal really helps this process, because it's not a one-time thing. It's actually, it's an iterative process, and it changes from day to day. So I highly recommend you start journaling a little bit and writing, you know, some kids call it a diary, but I call it journaling. And I have these capturing devices all over the place. In all of my cars, next to my bed, in my office, I have things that can always capture thoughts. Your cell phone is a digital recorder typically, which is another capturing device. But there's something magical about handwriting it. For example, George Lucas wrote the entire script for Star Wars by hand when he could have used a computer, because there was just something magical about creating that physically. Moving on to the next section is why we do things, or the motivating factors of why we're doing our work and working so hard. Going back to Aristotle, we do not have knowledge of a thing until we've grasped its why, that is to say, its cause. Pretty great words from a great man. While you're taking on this mission to achieve the outcome you envision, and it needs to be a mission, a higher cause. And you must have a burning desire for this outcome to become a reality. This is what's driving us to work so hard, the why. And it's different for each one of us, and could be multiple whys. And revealing your real why, or higher cause, is a very powerful thing. It empowers you, it clarifies your focus, it enables you to align resources, it motivates you. It removes limitations, and it generates possibilities. Here's some examples of powerful whys. Survival, freedom, the ability to give to others, to help others in need, stop tyranny, self-reliance, to become self-reliant, healing of a serious illness, educating your children, getting out of poverty, a desire to succeed, or a will to win, or in the case of an athlete, to win a title. To get out of debt, something as simple as get out of debt, but a very important reason to be doing certain things with our work. And what I'd like you to do is, after tonight you complete your outcome vision statement in your workbooks or your journal, is below that, write why you want that to come to fruition. So let's just say, for example, for a new agent, it might be pay off college loans, get out of debt. That's a driving force. That's a legitimate why. And we can put some, as we go through this training, we'll put some specific timeframes and goals for that agent to get out of debt. Moving on to context creation. Context creation is not usually seen in real estate training courses or any business training course for that matter, because it's almost impossible to understand. And what I'm going to explain to you today, you will not truly understand, and I use that in quotes, but I want you to just take a look at this concept for a minute and contemplate it as we go forward, because it's a very, very powerful thing that dovetails in envisioning and seeing your future and goal setting. So let's talk about what I mean here a little bit. Some people would refer to this as calling forth. Human beings have an amazing ability, an often unseen ability that's not recognized, to create from nothing. Einstein, for example, created relativity from nothing. He visualized it starting from nothing. If you've read any books on Albert Einstein, and I've got most of it, anything ever written of significance about him, the world's greatest mathematician actually saw things in pictures in his mind. And the most famous image that's been described about Einstein was visualizing himself standing on a light beam and seeing what happens as things changed. So he could understand the numbers, but what made some of his greatest breakthroughs was actually him visualizing simple pictures in his head that below them had incredible breakthrough concepts tied to them. So I always thought that was very interesting, that this guy who knew math better than anybody on the planet actually processed breakthrough ideas by visualizing. So he created relativity, or the concept of relativity, by visualizing. In that domain of physics, he just created a new possibility in this way of context creation. In a similar way, you have the ability to call for a context for living that is intangible but yet powerful. Some people might call this a mindset, but it's actually much more powerful than that as I use these terms. Is as if everything in your life were in their own boxes, and you call forth a new box that holds all the boxes. Let me illustrate this. It starts with a question that one could ask oneself or your friends, is who are you? And often people will, when you ask them who they are, will give you their business card. But are you your career, your name, your mind, your past, your body? So it's a question that's kind of out there. I know it's kind of a metaphysical question, but when you ask this question to people or contemplate it for yourself, it's a very difficult one to answer. But because you're really none of these things and you're all of these things. So what I mean by this is you have boxes in your life: your career, your family, your community, your children, your mind, your thoughts, and all of those are things that are happening in your life. And if we look at those are the boxes, right? But are you those boxes, is the question. Well, they are in your life. You have a career, you have a family, you have a body, you have a mind. But each one of these are kind of separate things, if you will. The whole point of context is understanding that there's a box that holds all the boxes. And that's who you are. You are all of these boxes. So what does that mean? Well, problems are just another box. We all have problems and frustrations, but you're not your problems. Yes, you have problems. Being alive, you have problems, but you're not your problems. You are something greater than all of these, the sum of all these parts and beyond. So what I mean by that is, let's look at what we might call an enlightened person. The normal person will be, typically you hear statements like, I'll be okay if I fix these 6 things, if I solve these problems, if I do this action, if I correct these things. Well, that's an ongoing dialogue we have with ourselves. The more enlightened person has a view from the box that holds the boxes, meaning that my life is magical right now, and I come from a place of well-being, and I choose to change these things because they don't match my creation of my life. So look at it this way. You have the power to create a mindset that is not dependent on your circumstances. It's like an attitude times 10. how does this metaphysical discussion, if you will, relate to being a real estate agent? Well, as you get more and more successful, you're going to have troubling days. You're going to have escrows fall apart. You're going to have ups and downs emotionally. But if you can kind of go back to, I am not my problems, you rise above them. And in that context, that box that holds all the boxes is your vision of your life. Your outcome vision comes from that context, where you want your life to be. And so you go back into your day-to-day work and you work on your problems. But at any moment, you can take a breath, step back, and realize life is magical just in this moment. And then go back in and solve the problems from a place of well-being, because you're not your problems or your credit card or your job or even your body. You can rise above that. And it's a mindset that, if you choose to contemplate it over time, becomes very, very powerful indeed. Moving on to goal setting. Pearson's law, that which is measured improves. That which is measured and reported improves exponentially. Peter Drucker, probably the most famous business author in management, said something the same way. What's measured improves. The sad truth about people and finances, particularly in the United States, 27% depend on outside support, 60% barely get by, 10% live comfortably, and 3% are financially independent. What differentiates these groups when studied in depth, and we're going to talk about some of these studies actually today, is that the top 3% were really strong goal setters. They had clearly defined goals and had them in writing. The next 10% have goals in mind, but they have no written plans for their accomplishments. The middle 60% sometimes wish for something. And the bottom 27% typically just dwell in a very, very bad mental state. Symptoms of agents without goals is they often feel like they're in a rut. They have inconsistent income. They're consumed with daily crisis management. Now, we do have to deal with our daily crises. I don't mean that you don't, but you don't need to be emotionally consumed by them, as challenging as it may sometimes be. Agents in this type of rut have no higher cause or purpose, typically, driving their daily activities. They're not coming from the why we're doing this on a regular basis. They lack enthusiasm and energy. It's important to assess where you are right now. When you're in survival, you want to set your goals and getting your short-term goals and getting to stability, then success, and self-reliance. These are how I view the major 4 steps of financial independence in moving up the ladder. I'm going to talk a little about the history of goal setting. Goal setting is everywhere. Thousands of books have been written about it. But very rarely do I meet a person that has really studied its history like I have. So I want to share some of that history for you, because it's going to set up how I am going to start coaching our team from here forward, starting on August 1st, with a new, very simple form that will be a tracker of your goals and your daily actions. So, some history. Edwin Locke is one of the famous writers of goal setting. He began to examine this whole subject in the 60s and continued researching goal setting, particularly in business, for 30 years. He derived his idea from goal setting from Aristotle. We talked about Aristotle's concept of final cause earlier, and I gave you a great quote from Aristotle. So Aristotle was Locke's major influence, and that purpose or cause we call the why. Goals that are deemed difficult to achieve and are specific tend to increase performance more than goals that are not. In some of these studies in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, 99 out of 110 of these studies found that specific hard goals produce better performance than medium, easy to do your best, or no goals. We've seen this over and over again. In the 40s and 50s, there's many engineering and educational publications to discuss the merits of specific and measurable. If you think about technology and engineering, they're all about numbers, analytical, specific, measured, fine-tuning devices, calibration, etc. So from that domain, goals were a major, major thing. The benefits of being a goal setter are focus, effort, persistence, and cognition. I want to step you through these a little bit. Number one, focus. Goals tend to direct attention and action. They narrow the attention and direct efforts to goal-relevant activities and away from undesirable goal-irrelevant activities. Goals can lead to more effort. One typically produces 4 widgets an hour and has a goal of producing 6. One may work more intensely. Common sense. Persistence. Someone who becomes more prone to work through setbacks if pursuing a goal. That goal and the why behind the goal is the driving force that improves performance. We also can see that goals lead individuals to develop and change their behavior. In a study in 1976 by Terbogs, the subjects that were studied set specific goals, and it revealed that they had employed more relevant learning strategies. So it makes common sense. If you're really goal-directed, you tend to search out things to help you achieve those goals in terms of learning and studying. This is a simple success formula that we've seen published in different ways over time, but it's really pretty interesting when you look at what's underneath it. Number one, know your outcome, take massive action, obtain results and feedback, and adapt until you get what you want. Almost sounds like child play in a way. We can take these 4 steps and adapt them to business, to sports, and almost anything, and uncover what's going on below them and relate them to goal setting. If anybody studies SMART goals, they'll quickly uncover the term SMART goals. S-M-A-R-T. Some claim that George Duran developed the concept of SMART goals in his 1981 work. There's a smart way to manage goals and objectives. The very prolific business author Paul Meyer used that term in his work, Personal Success. It was written some 20, 30 years ago, and he outlined them as specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible, what the letters mean in his work. Ken Blanchard, in his famous book, The 1 Minute Manager, had a different take on it. But he did refer to SMART goals as specific, measurable, obtainable, relevant, and trackable. The way I prefer to refer to it, and again, this is not my original work, it's just an interpretation of one of many of SMART goals, is SMARTER goals, which is specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, evaluate, and reevaluate. Now, the E and R at the end is really, really important, and it's not just because I think it's important. This has been studied. I'll talk to you about this in a second. But let's first dissect each one a little bit. So specific is a criterion that stresses the need for a specific goal over rather something vague or general or unambiguous. And it tends to answer the 5 W's of specificity. What do I want to accomplish? What specific reasons or purpose or benefits of accomplishing the goal, which is the why? Who's involved? What location can be identified? And identify the requirements and or constraints, the which. So the what, why, who, where, and which is all answered in being specific when you approach goal setting. Measurable, the second criteria, answers how much, how many, how will I know when it's accomplished. Attainable. Third criterion stresses something that's realistic and attainable. Your 3-year vision, your 10-day goals, your 1-year goals. So if it's just off the charts ridiculous, your subconscious knows that, and it's not a true goal. That might be a dream. The difference between a dream and a goal is huge. One is a vague wish, other is a roadmap we're driving on to get to that destination that's realistic and attainable. So an attainable goal will answer the question, how can a goal be accomplished? It starts to bring in action, ideas for action. Relevant. It has to be relevant. Make 50 peanut butter sandwiches by 2 o'clock for a banker. Well, that's a goal, but it's really not relevant. So it has to be relevant to your life and important to your life. A relevant goal can answer the question, does it seem worthwhile? Is it the right time? Does this match our efforts and needs? And are you the right person to accomplish it? So it has to be relevant to you. It's personal and relevant. Time bound. So rather than trackable, I like the idea of time bound. This is the fifth criterion that answers the question of when. Can I do it in 6 months, 6 weeks? Can I do it today? All of those may be relevant to short-term or long-term goals, but a goal without time is just another dream. Evaluate. Here's some added on to the smarter word. On a regular basis, one must evaluate the feedback and results one is obtaining by the actions taken and adapt our behavior. And so today we're introducing a new form for our agents called the KR form to our training. And the KR stands for knowledge of results. Knowledge of results. The KR form. And reevaluate. You must reassess. You must revisit your major outcome vision and smaller outcome visions because they change over time as your desires and needs change. So reassessing your goals and your visions is an ongoing, very iterative process. And it basically ensures they're always relevant. What's relevant a month ago might not be relevant today. So it's something you're constantly going to be refreshing. And the beauty of it is this is your vision. So you can update it as you need to. This study, which is a large piece of work, includes Edwin Locke, one of the founders or fathers, I would say, of goal setting that was done between 1969 and 1980. And within this study is a very, very interesting piece of work. And again, I'm not going to expect you to understand all this, but essentially what this is saying is that KR stands for knowledge of results. So this is a term in the study of goal setting that is used by people analyzing subject matter. So we're going to continue to use that in our work from now on, knowledge of results. So when these different groups had knowledge of results, in other words, they were getting feedback on a regular basis of their actions, working or not working, and they had hard and specific goals. Those two combinations of things trumped performance in every other situation. So in this case, that's number one. They had knowledge of results. They had hard, specific goals. Number two is specific goals without KR. In other words, they had specific goals but weren't getting regular feedback about their activities and their actions. In other words, I know what I want, but I don't know if what I'm doing is producing the results I need. Number three is KR with no specific goals. They were getting feedback, but they really had no specific goals. And number four is with neither. So when they studied all these combinations, kind of in a laboratory type analysis setting, far and away they found that number one trumped performance. So what we've learned from studying these studies all over the world is that knowledge of results, call it feedback, plus hard goals really enhances production. We've also learned in these studies that subjects may underestimate their capacity to produce or gain great performance without correct information about their previous performance. Participation. Participation, what we're referring to is who's setting the goals. Is the importance of participation is that it not only leads to setting higher goals, in other words, if you, the subject or the agent, sets your own goals, but it can lead to increased understanding and creative ideas of how to obtain them. Let's look at two goal statements so we can get clear on how you should be writing your goals. A big goal statement would be, I want to make more money selling houses. Okay? A smarter goal statement is, I want to make $250,000 in the next 12 months selling homes with Scott Brokers and Thrive, and I will attend every training session and do all the actions necessary to accomplish this goal. So let's break this down. And the second statement, is it specific? Well, sure it is. It's 250,000, 12 months, how you're going to do it. Very specific. Is it measurable? Well, you're either going to make 250,000 or you're not. Is it attainable? Everybody in this room has the ability to do that. We've already seen agents well on their way to doing that. In fact, we're having an agent cap this week. Is it relevant? I think making a lot of money as a real estate agent is very relevant to most real estate agents' lives. Is it time bound? It's 12 months. Clearly time bound. And with training and actions, you're going to get feedback to be able to evaluate your actions. And as long as you track those actions and compare them to results, so you can evaluate and reevaluate and reassess. So I think this just simple goal statement fits the criteria of a smarter goal. So what are the things we want to measure? Again, measure and reassess. Calls are connected to existing contacts and new contacts. Personal notes sent out to your database, drop-bys to existing contacts and potentially Thrive vendors. Meetings with contacts, pre-list meetings, any cold door knocking, connections, listing presentations given and taken, listings in escrow and buyer contracts. So these are things we do every day. We just need to start tracking them in a very simple way that's not very time consuming.
So in your Salesforce CRM, we have a system that actually tracks your outbound actions connected to each lead or contact you're working with. So for instance, once you open the contact or lead profile, you will see under the section Open Activities the buttons New Task and New Event, depending on whether you want to record a new task or a new event. So a new task could be something like a phone call or a drop-by or a personal note and so on. And a new event could be something like a meeting or a listing presentation. And it's very, very important that for every outbound action you do, you make sure to record it in your CRM, as this will tie into your goal setting that we will discuss in the next slide. Also, there will be more detail on how to record your outbound actions in the CRM manual, which is found in your online resource center.
Also, you will find a calculation like this called the Agent Net Income Worksheet. And it's designed where you fill in certain variables and it will break this down into daily objectives. So let me walk you through this. So let's just say this particular agent is a new licensee. This is day one of that licensee's work with our firm. And they want to make $150,000 in the next 12 months. Now, I don't want anybody on my team that has a goal less than this. So I'd rather it be 250 or 500,000. But if I see one of these forms and it says 75,000, I've got to spend more time with that agent because that's not enough production. So we want to start this at least 150,000, preferably 250 or 500,000 in the next 12 months. Tax rate, I've just thrown in 20%, but you can throw in whatever number you want. Estimated income needed for taxes. So basically what that's doing is dividing out your tax rate so you actually net after taxes 150, so you'd have to have 187,500. But then there's expenses as a real estate agent. You've got gas, you've got your auto insurance. I suggest you have your health insurance paid out of a business account and other things. So you're going to be viewing your life, as we will see in upcoming trainings. You've got a business life and a personal life. This is just your business life. So you want to load in and calculate all of your expenses. If you do flyers, you hire a photographer, you build a website, all of that stuff. Your agent fees paid in, your $100 a month, etc. So you've got some business expenses. In this example, I've just thrown 25,000 in. It's actually quite high, but I'm using use as a good example here just so we can see how these numbers work. So that means your adjusted gross income is 212,500 in this example. So you've got to split with Scott Brokers at 70%. That means you need to gross 303. Now, there's something, if you guys really study this form, that's missing, and it's missing for a reason, because there's no capping involved in this system. So that's actually padding this for you. You actually don't need to make that much. If you follow what I'm saying is, this calculation is assuming every dollar that comes in is split, but we know it's not. So this number, when you calculate it, when you cap, is lower. But I want to make your target higher, if that makes sense. So we're going from $150,000 net as a desire. When we run through these numbers, we're already up to 300 grand. So your average commission per side in Southern California is typically 2.5%. So when you divide out these numbers, that means you need a gross volume of 12 million of homes sold in the next 12 months. The average sales price in this example is 600. Some of you may be working in an area that's 500. Some may be at $1.2 million. Some may be at 4 million. Stephanie's average in Malibu is probably in the 5 or 6 million as an average or higher. So each market is different. So you put in your average sales price. That means the transaction target in this example is 20 deals. So the monthly transaction goal is 1.69. The quarterly transaction goal is 5. These are using exact numbers. So obviously it would be 5 transactions, not 5.06. On an average, the referral needed to get one escrow to close is typically, when you study the referral business, is 3 to 4 to 1. What I mean by that is, if you're working your network and you get 3 referrals, probably one, maybe 2 of them will close, but never 100%. If you got 50 referrals through the year, it doesn't translate to 50 deals. It does and it doesn't. Where the good news is let's say 50 referrals translates to 20 closed deals. But some of those 20 closed deals may spin off other referrals, so it grows from there. We're just using this as a 1-to-1 ratio. So in this worksheet, the example is 4 to 1. You need 4 referrals to get 1 close. Connections needed to get 1 referral. As you'll see in the KR form, we're calling a connection anytime you meet with a person. We're distinguishing calls on the telephone with actually seeing a person. That could be a drop-by, that could be a lunch or a coffee, it could be a pre-list meeting, you see a FSBO or expired at their front door. Anytime you're actually shaking hands with a person, we're calling that a connection. So in this example, we're calculating it takes 10 connections to get a referral. So with these assumptions, now we see that we need to get 6.75 referrals per month. Connections needed per month is 67. So connections daily is 3. So in this example, for this agent to want it net 150 gross, $300,000 in commission in this market that's about $600,000 average sales price per home, they need to do 3 daily connections. And those daily connections are made up of all kinds of different meetings. So when we go back to the KR form, and I'm coaching this person on an ongoing basis, we'll start to see last week, how many connections did they have? And does it track? And as I've said to most of you, when agents come to me and they say, I want to make more money, I'll turn to them and say, how many contacts did you make last week? And if they say 6, we start, backing up these numbers. It'll take them months to get a listing. So for me to coach you properly, I need to be able to track your most important activities so we can see if they match your income goal. And so what I want from each of you is to learn what your next 12-month objective is. And you can work this sheet, or I'll work it with you. And we'll back into your numbers. And you'll know what we talked about a 3-year vision. We're down to a 1-day goal here of 3 connections a day, right? This is also calculating, by the way, 22 work days in a month. It's not 7 days a week. So we're calculating time off in this formula. Obviously, you're going to need at least 1, if not 2 days off a week for downtime, so that this formula calculates that. It takes that into consideration.
So we now have an updated goal setting system that has been actually integrated into our Salesforce CRM. which will do all of the calculations discussed in the previous slide with an agent net income worksheet once you establish your income goals. So please create your goals in your CRM by logging in, clicking on the Goal tab, and then clicking on the Create New Goal button. Please name this goal something with your name, like, Paget Kagi Goals, and input the fields under the information section, like average sales price in your area, average commission, 12-month net income goal, tax rate, and estimated expenses. And it will automatically calculate your weekly activity goals based on those fields, like how many calls you need to make, how many connections you need to make a week. More detail on how to do this in your CRM manual, found in the Online Resource Center.
Obviously, we want to do some goal setting and going forward. 10-day goals, both real estate, career, and personal, and make sure they fit this criteria. By the end of the training, we want you to generate at least 10 leads and put 3 deals together. That includes not only my training, but some of you know I'm facilitating Brian's peak performance training. He has similar types of views as during whatever training course you're going through for many weeks, you want to start producing results within that training. You want to have attended and viewed all training sessions, read one of the recommended books, and generate X dollars in income, which will fill back in for each one of you as you figure out what your objectives are. Keep in mind, you're not a student. I don't want students. I want doers. We're all go-getters. I want you to take action each and every day. This is a little section in your workbook. You can put together a specific and smarter goal statement for what you want to have happen in 1 year. Place yourself in that future and start to see what must change. So for tonight, we want you to redefine and continue to be very specific on a one-page piece of paper, your 3-year outcome vision. For this training, let's review our action list. Number 1, write and refine your 3-year thriving vision. Write your 10-day goals. Write your 1-year goals. Continue to call all the people in your network utilizing the campaigning dialogue or the 1, 2, 3 dialogue. For you peak producer students, Brian refers to similar dialogues as his mayor dialogue and he calls it the big 3. Right? I've seen it called 10 different things in different books. I call it the 1, 2, 3 dialogue. And to remind everybody what that means, the 1, 2, 3 stands for help, offering assistance, in other words, help, expressing to the client how much you value them as a client, and then asking for a referral one way or another. So getting those 3 things into the dialogue. Number 5, make 10 calls on a Monday, 5 calls on a Tuesday, 10 calls on a Wednesday, 5 on a Thursday, and 10 on a Friday. So you can just push this out depending on what day of the week you're watching this training for the next 5 work days.